Just thinking it's a choice. And my whole thing to that is who would choose this? Like, who would choose to be the oppressed? Like, if I could be the privileged one, wouldn't I pick that? Like, why would I choose to go through this, to battle family members, to battle homophobia? Like, especially when you consider I'm already dealing with other marginalized identities. Like, I'm already a black man. Why would I choose to be black and gay? Like, who would ask for that?
What's your name? What are your gender pronouns? How old are you? And what's your sexuality?
My name is Landin Morris. I'm 25 years old. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I identify as a gay black man.
What are you passionate about?
I'm passionate about activism, plants. As you can see, I have this huge rack going on in the back of me, and this is just a few of them. I love animals. I'm into writing. I'm a journalist major, and so keeping up to date with the news and things that are going on in our society is pretty important to me. But oh, and also cooking. I love cooking, and baking specifically. So that sums up the majority of my passions at the moment.
You said that you are a journalism major.
Yes.
What year are you in college?
I just succeeded through my junior year, so I'm a uprising senior.
Okay.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about what it was like for you growing up. What was your relationship to your parents, siblings, and friends?
So growing up, for the longest time I was an only child. There's an 8-year difference between me and my sister. So I was an only child for a while, and I grew up in a separated household. And both of my parents were in law enforcement, so they were pretty busy with their careers. And so I spent a handful of time by myself, which isn't something that I'm gonna say I disliked, because I was a very independent kid. My mom said she would take me to the park, and I was like the kid that would like sit away from other kids to like play by himself. Not because I didn't want to play with other kids, but just because I was content with just my space and doing things by my rules. And so it didn't really bother me too much per se, but I definitely had a very like introverted personality growing up, and I wasn't as social, as outgoing as I am now. So yeah.
Okay. When did you first know you were gay, and what did the coming out process look like for you?
So I didn't acknowledge I was gay until I was in high school, but I knew I liked men in elementary school. And I remember the moment I vocalized it. I was in, it couldn't have been like past second grade. I don't remember. I don't know if it was like kindergarten or first grade. I want to say it was first grade to stay safe. But like this new Superman movie had came out, and I was big in superheroes at the time. And the actor who had played Superman, I thought he was so attractive. And I remember talking to my dad on the phone, and I was just like, oh, like, can we go see that movie again? Like, and he was like, well, why do you want to go see it? Like, we just saw it. I was like, oh, because you know, the guy who played Superman was just so handsome. Or no, I think I said attractive or cute. I don't know what I said, but I was expressing attraction to him. And that was also the first moment I dealt with like backlash, because my dad had gotten like this awkward silence, and like we weren't saying anything on the phone, and then he just came out of nowhere. It's just like, son, we don't say those things about men. That's not something we do. And I didn't understand why, but after that, I didn't express any attraction towards men until years later. So, but because of that experience, and mind you, that movie came out in 2006, and I'm 22, and I was born in 1998. So I knew pretty early what my sexuality was, to say the least.
How did your father's response make you feel? Did you have any feeling towards it? I know you said you were pretty young.
Yeah, I felt very confused for the most part, because I didn't understand why. Like I said, I had such a strong sense of myself, and I think that just had to do with the fact that I was so independent. I had spent so much time with myself. I already knew who I was, what I liked and what I didn't like, and I didn't understand why what I said was wrong, or what me being attracted to men, like what was wrong about that to say. But it also made me very reserved, because like I said, like I was very independent and I was more introverted, and me and my dad, we were the close ones growing up. I was closer to my dad than I was my mom. But even so, I only spoke about so much to my parents because they were so busy. And I just remember after that experience, I never really talked to my dad about attraction about attraction to anyone after that. Like, even when I tried to, you know, think that I like girls and I tried to pursue things with women, I never even came to him for advice with women after that, because that was like the first impression that I had. So I never really followed up with him with anything in relation to dating or sex or any of that following that experience.
Have you experienced any mental health challenges because of how others view your sexual orientation?
Mental health challenges, like, do you mean like have I struggles with like my own self-image?
Yeah. Have you like experienced anything like depression, anxiety?
Yes. So when I remember, like I said, I acknowledged I was gay in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember at the time when I acknowledged it, being in the closet didn't really feel like the closet, because it almost felt like a safe space. Because I just remember thinking, had I came out, I would have had to deal with all of like the repercussions of coming out, which would have been the backlash from my family and the backlash in school. And I also grew up in a very small town. Like, I was the only, my graduating class was like 65 kids, and like I was one of 2 gay kids in the entire school, and the other gay kid was my boyfriend. So me and him, well, my ex-boyfriend, so me and him weren't even like friends. And it just felt very isolated, and I just remember thinking, like, I don't want to deal with this on top of everything else that I'm dealing with at the moment, because I already felt alone in high school. So I didn't want to come out and add more, because I already felt like I was going through enough depression and anxiety in high school at the time. So I didn't want to worsen that. And so at the time, being in the closet kind of just felt secure, because I kind of felt like, at least when I was there, like I wasn't just being blatantly attacked, if that makes sense, or I wasn't being blatantly come at. But then I remember, as I got older, like after I graduated and after I went to community college, being in the closet just felt claustrophobic. Like, it starts to feel like you're running out of space, because once you start to grow into yourself more, you need the freedom to just be who you are, and you need the space to do that, and you need to be able to do that without judgment. And so I remember, like, at the height of my depression, that was when I knew I had to come out, because I was like, I can't take being in the closet anymore. I can't take not being who I am. I can't take having to keep up with like a double life, if that makes sense, and have to pretend to be someone else here at home, and then be someone else out there, and then all the lines get blurred, and you can't even recognize who you are anymore, because you haven't given yourself the space to do so. And that was like at the peak. And that was when I realized, I was like, I'd rather fight everyone else in the entire world than fight myself internally. Because that internal battle, I felt, would have put me at a greater risk for other mental illnesses, or just, you know, for other things, for other detriments. So that was when I made the decision to put me and my health first. And I said, okay, well, if anyone else has a problem with me being this way, then they're gonna have a problem with me, but I'd rather have a problem with them than sit here and have conflict with myself.
What do you think is the biggest misconception that most people have about gay men?
I think the biggest misconception is that they, 1, think it's a choice, and 2, they like to blend homosexuality, not even just with gay men, but they like to blend homosexuality in general with like other abnormal, or and abnormal is not even the proper word, I should say non-traditional, or in some cases like perverse sexualities. Like, I've heard like from like homophobic people, like, oh yeah, like or people who pretend to be allies, like, oh yeah, I don't care, you know, if you're dating a guy or an animal, it's all okay. I'm like, what? A man and an animal is not the same thing. Don't confuse the two with each other like that. God, that hurts my nerves. And I feel like people, they just like to clump all of it together, like, oh well, you know, this is different and this is different, so we're just gonna put it together. No, it's not the same. And that's not being supportive. You're over here misrepresenting my community. Get it right. And then the first one, just thinking it's a choice. And my whole thing to that is who would choose this? Like, who would choose to be the oppressed? Like, if I could be the privileged one, wouldn't I pick that? Like, why would I choose to go through this, to battle family members, to battle homophobia, like, especially when you consider I'm already dealing with other marginalized identities. Like, I'm already a black man. Why would I choose to be black and gay? Like, who would ask for that if they had the choice? But I say all of that to say that I'm very, still, despite all of the issues, or not even issues, but I'd say the conflicts or the prejudice that society tries to impose on me, I'm still very much proud of my identity and who I am.
During the 1990s, the HIV/AIDS pandemic disproportionately affected the LGBTQIA+ community, specifically gay men. Some say the government didn't do enough to combat the disease. What is your opinion on the topic?
I definitely don't think the government did a lot to combat the disease. And this is a topic that has always been of great interest to me because I remember when I came out to a family member, he had told me, like, straight to my face, like, oh, we're gonna have to pray that you don't catch AIDS. And I was just like, what do you mean? Like, and I was so confused, and I just remember having to, like, do some more research on the situation, and that's when I realized that, like, one of the biggest stigmas surrounding the gay community is that gay men are the originators or the perpetuators of HIV and AIDS. And a lot of that stems from the fact that gay men, especially gay black men, were the biggest group affected by the HIV and AIDS epidemic. And so a lot of people, they like to bridge that connection by saying, oh, so gay men, especially gay black men, they were the ones who introduced it, and they're the ones who are spreading it, and you know, it's a gay disease. Right before we did this interview, I was watching Pose, and I think Pray Tell describes it as, he said the divine answer, or he said Darwin's answer to sodomy. That's how they would describe it, things like that. But in actuality, gay black men, or gay men in general, they were more susceptible to contracting HIV due to other factors that involve their marginalized identities. Like, for starters, there's no gay or LGBT sex ed taught in schools. Like, straight people grow up being taught how to put on a condom, being taught where to go to get birth control, being taught all of these other healthy facets about their sex life. And gay people or other people in the LGBT community don't have those resources, and so they grow up exposing themselves to unsafe sex, not even being aware of the dangers that come with it. That's the first thing. Second, like I said, gay black men were the most susceptible group, and when you consider all the other like systematic oppression that black men are susceptible to, or that black people in general are susceptible to, it almost makes sense. Like, if you grow up in a marginalized community that lacks, you know, proper access to medical resources and proper access to educational opportunities and career opportunities, how are you going to be able to stay afloat and on top of these dangers that float in communities that are marginalized and that are heavily perpetuated and enforced with diseases and illnesses? And so in a lot of those cases, even if you were gay and black during that time and you contracted HIV or AIDS, you didn't have the money nor the medical resources to go get tested or get the proper treatment that you needed. And so it was kind of just like you were set up to get it, and then when you got it, that was just it. And that's where I feel the government that's where I feel like they neglected the community, because they weren't concerned that this wasn't affecting a group that was already down bad from the beginning. And a lot of people, like I said, they don't understand the actuality behind that epidemic and like what actually happened and why these communities were more susceptible to contracting it. And it's been something that's been of deep interest to me because, like I said, gay black men they were the most susceptible. And me as a gay black man, I just think now how different my life would have been had I been born during that time. Or I just think about how, another reference from Pose, I remember Pray Tell, he was saying, you know, he was like, growing up, we had so many older gay men to look up to. He was like, but you younger ones now, he was like, you guys are growing up with no one there because the last generation was almost wiped out. And that hits heavy, especially for me, because gay youth often make up minorities in their families. They're usually one of a few, and that's if of a few, because in some families, especially if you grow up in a homophobic family, other LGBTQ members of your family may be isolated, and so you may grow up thinking you're the only one there, and then you try to look up to other role models or try to look at other places in the world and see where you could emulate or learn from, and you can't. And that was very much an issue for me. I had to look into myself really and kind of just figure out who I was. But that's another conversation. But I say all of that to say the HIV and AIDS epidemic was definitely something that the government neglected, and I think it says a lot about how they view the LGBTQ community, especially gay men.
Have you ever felt that you were the victim of homophobia or felt threatened by those around you because of your sexual orientation? If yes, can you provide an example?
Yes. So I remember, like I said, I grew up in a very small school, and word in high school spreads fast. It spreads especially fast if it's a small high school. And I remember, I forgot how it happened, but like during like one of these periods, some jock had like said something homophobic about me during like art class or whatever the case may have been, and I was pissed because one, like I think at the time I was like a junior and this kid was a freshman, so I was just like, who are you? Like like what do you think this is? Like, you just came here and you think you're about to up yourself by talking about me? So I had to like go find him like in between like one of the periods and be like, oh, so like what was this that was said? And it wasn't even something that was like I wasn't even trying to fight. It's just that at that point I felt like I had had enough, and I was about to be like, okay, like I'm not about to be just being pushed around from everyone. And that's something I definitely want to express. Like in high school, although I was still very much insecure in my sexuality and I was working through the motions, I never let anyone disrespect me. No matter how insecure I felt internally, that was not something that I allowed other people to sense, because as soon as they sense that, they feel that they have the power to just say and treat you however, and that's not something I tolerated whatsoever. Like in high school, I was I was heavier, so like I felt like the combination of like my mouth and my size did a good job of kind of like persuading people to keep my names out of their mouth. But there were just certain situations like that where like whenever somebody would say something, I would have to really call them out and really be like, okay, what was it that you said, and why did you say this? Or even just certain situations with family members who would cherry pick verses from the Bible, and I would just have to sit here and really go back and forth with them. But of course, having biblical conversations with someone about homosexuality is always a difficult conversation.
Describe a moment in time where you had to hide or suppress your sexuality to appease others. I know you went into it a little, but
yes.
You can like give another one if you feel comfortable doing so.
I would say, I feel like the most that I've had to suppress my sexuality, and this isn't even something that has to do with like my growing up, but it may be something that has to do with like with me, say, how do I describe this? Like going into new settings, or with people that I'm unfamiliar with. Like I think I had touched upon this too with another friend of mine, but I was talking about how like all male environments make me uncomfortable, specifically because homophobic men are like the worst. Like they're the worst because you never see them coming, and they could be anyone. Like you could have like a conversation with a man, and then as soon as he finds out you're gay, it's like the whole rhythm and the whole dynamic just shifts. And it's like I have to go from then being friendly to like being prepared, because like you never know what's necessarily gonna happen. And so I remember growing up, like whenever my mom took me to the barbershop, like those always felt like very uncomfortable spaces for me, because at the barbershop it's just like a bunch of grown ass men just getting together, like putting other people down sometimes, and I would just be sitting there just listening to them, like, you know, spit the F word, or, you know, like talk crap about their girlfriends, all this other stuff. And I'm just like, oh my God, like, what is this? Like, it looks like someplace I don't want to be. But I'm literally just here to get my hair cut. And like, those were environments where I felt like I had to like suppress my sexuality the most, because it's just, even if I came out, and even if, like I said, I was bold enough to really like hold my ground there, nothing could save me from the fact that that homophobic barber had to cut my hair, and if he messed up my haircut, then we would have a problem. So those were always settings where I kind of felt like I had to pass. And so in those settings, I was usually very quiet and usually very reserved. But now I've definitely grown out of that, so to speak. Like, I'm still very reserved in barbershop settings because, like I said, I feel like it's a very toxically masculine space, and I don't want to contribute to that. But if I go in there and they start acting out of pocket, yeah, I'm gonna speak up.
What do you think the effects of race on your sexuality are, if there are any?
Ooh, I think the biggest effects of my race on sexuality would be the exacerbation of hypermasculinity in the Black community, and men who perpetuate that feel as if homosexuality is a threat to that. Like, so I had a conversation with someone in my family the other day, because I recently started painting my nails, and I was on FaceTime with him, and he saw that I had painted my nails, and it'd been a little while since me and him had spoken, so he also saw that I got a nose ring. And then the dynamic of the conversation changed, and so I was just like, okay, like, I didn't understand what had happened, but then I had just brushed past it because I had things to do. And then I spoke to him again the next day, and he was just like, oh, like, I don't really think you should wear that. Like, those are things that, you know, resemble being a woman, and those are feminine things. And then he started referencing God. God doesn't want you to you know, do things that represent being a woman. He made you in a man's image, and all this other nonsense. And I was just sitting there on the phone, like this is my problem, right? See? And then he said, I know how you spoke to me, you know, a little while ago in regards to your sexuality and how you feel that you're gay, how I feel that I'm gay, but I still shouldn't be doing those things and all this other stuff. And that really pissed me off, because here's the deal. Me painting my nails or me having a nose ring has nothing to do with me being gay at all. That has to do with my style. So it kind of just felt like he was looking at all the feminine things on me and then trying to associate them with me being gay, which that all goes back to the toxic masculinity thing, because one, you can be gay and be masculine. You can be gay and be anything. That's just what like, period. You can be gay and be anything. That's the first thing. You being gay doesn't necessarily correlate you being feminine. And just because you do feminine things, that does not make you gay. And that is such a concept that I feel is neglected in the Black community. And so he was looking at me, seeing that the things that I do that are feminine, such as painting my nails and having a nose piercing, correlated to me being gay, when in actuality they have nothing to do with each other. And so we were sitting there having this conversation that I really didn't even understand, because I was just like, okay, like, you're insulting my sexuality and my style at the same time, but you're attacking them as if they're as if they're the same thing, and they're not. And all that comes down to the fact that you feel threatened by the fact that I'm wearing nail polish. It all just felt so stupid to me. But I feel like that toxic masculinity in the Black community is the biggest threat to Black LGBT youth.
What privileges do you receive that trans women, lesbian women, and queer women as a whole do not because of their gender, if there are any?
Okay, I would say, and this is just something that I feel like just comes with me just being a man, so to speak. Like, it doesn't even necessarily just relate to LGBTQ women, but it relates to women as a whole. Being less susceptible to certain violences that are usually targeted against women. Say, like, for instance, walking at night. Like, that was something I did a lot when I was like really, really depressed and going through it in high school, because like at night I just kind of felt like I could walk freely with no one else being there. But I remember when I wrote a paper about the murder rates of Black trans women in my community college, and I learned about all of the horrific ways in which so many young, beautiful women have been just wrongfully targeted. And I just remember thinking like, wow, like me being a man makes me less susceptible to being targeted in this way. Like it was an eye-opening experience for me, because I just remember having to reflect on how, as much as I'm aware that I'm marginalized, if I don't recognize the ways in which I'm privileged, I'm not actually helping. Because I need to realize what it is that I can do that others can't do, so that I could use those ways to help them.
Have any friendships, family relationships, and or job opportunities been ruined because of your sexual orientation? If yes, can you share an experience or two with us?
Yes, so I had 2 major relationships that have been kind of, that have been, I want to say destroyed, or they've been like disrupted, I guess, because of my sexuality. Or no, not because of me, because of them. There we go. But one was like one of my childhood best friends. So growing up, I rarely, like, I usually had like girlfriends. I never had any guy friends, because it was just so hard for me to connect with other men, because I wasn't like one of those like boys that grew up liking to play sports. And I also wasn't, I feel like men are so pack orientated. Like, they're just so like, do whatever it takes, like, yeah bro, like let's go do this, let's go do that. And like I said, I was very independent. I was like, you want to go run up and down the street for what? Like you want to go do this? Like, this sounds crazy. Like, I was just so above it. And so I didn't have many guy friends. I always had more girlfriends. And I remember there was this one guy friend that I had, and me and him were friends for years. Like, I mean, from elementary school going all the way up, like even after I left our elementary school in 5th grade, me and him remained friends. As I moved around over the phone, we had sleepovers, our families knew each other, we went on vacations with each other. And I remember when I was in high school and I needed to, like, once I realized who I was like, okay, I have to come out to him. And so I invited him over for a sleepover, and we were going for a walk. Essentially, we were walking my dog. And I just remember like telling him that I was gay, and like his complete vibe like switched up, and he got really, really quiet. And he just stopped talking. And this happens like in the middle of the sleepover, because sleepovers go from Friday, Saturday to Sunday. This happened on Saturday, and I was just thinking like, damn, like we gotta go home, we're about to share this bed, like like I don't really know what's about to happen. And like I said, like, and at the time, like I was just so, I like internally I was insecure, but I think at that moment I was just more so hurt by the fact that he had did that. And so I actually like took it back. Like, I played it off as if like it was a prank, and then he was just like, oh, like thank God, like don't play like that or something like that. And I was just like, whoa, like it's like that. And me and his friendship like fell apart after that, essentially, because even though things were good in his eyes, they weren't good in mine. And then years later, like me and him did see each other again, because I had other friends from his school. So when I ended up going to his prom and he saw me again, and I finally did come out to him again, he was just kind of like, oh yeah, like, you know, I don't really care and all this other stuff. And I'm just like, you definitely do though. And that was like, that was a big one for me, just because, like I said, like he was the only guy friend that I had really growing up. And so I had to lose him, but that was fine, because I'd rather have no company than bad company.
What is your opinion on using labels to identify yourself? Lesbian, bisexual, gay, transsexual, those are examples. Are you for or against them?
I'm for them, but I feel that if you believe you fall somewhere in the community but you don't subscribe to those labels, then don't take on them. Like, if you feel as if you're something else, like if you feel that you're fluid, or you feel as if the term queer is enough for you because it gives enough of a hint without, you know, requiring a specific, you know, gender or sex that you're attracted to, then go by that. Go by what feels most comfortable to you.
Are you religious?
I am.
In what ways, if there are any, does your sexuality interfere with your practices?
So, For the longest time, I had to like, it was really a battle. Like, because I just remember growing up hearing so much from my family about how homosexuality was a sin, and how much, you know, God despised sinners and all this other stuff. But then it got to a point where I just remember having like an internal conversation with myself. And for starters, like, nobody's God. Like, nobody. So nobody can really speak for him. That's my first opinion. Second, religion in general, in my opinion, it's used to spread and promote love. And I'm not about to allow anyone to use religion, something that's supposed to, you know, be used to express love and peace and non-violence. I'm not about to let someone use that to make me hate myself. That's not even what it was intended to do. You have a lot of people out here who are practicing Christianity, but they're practicing it in the wrong ways because they're out here judging people when the Bible tells you not to judge people. They're out here cherry picking verses from the Bible that they aren't even aware of the true meaning of. Like, I remember one of the biggest references to homosexuality I've had in the Bible has been two of them, actually. One of them was the Old Testament, where it says, you know, man shall not lie with man, or all that other stuff. And one, that was in the Old Testament. The Old Testament says a whole bunch of other stuff that you're not supposed to be doing, such as certain fabrics that you're not supposed to be wearing, certain foods that you're not supposed to be eating. And a lot of people who recite that verse from the Old Testament go and do all the other stuff that the Old Testament tells you not to do. So you're going to talk about this one, but you're not going to talk about the ones that you break. How does that make sense? It doesn't. And then on top of that, people, like I said, because I'm a journalism major, I'm very familiar with words, and most people aren't aware of how words evolve over time and how the term homosexual back in the day actually meant pedophilia. That, I feel, is one of the non-subliminal ways that homosexuality and pedophilia are still correlated today, because historically it's always been correlated and carried in that manner. And so that's why when it says that in the Old Testament, it doesn't say anything relating to same-sex sex between women, because it was just looked at as like a pedophilic thing. And so there's that. And so I just remember once I made that realization, I was like, no, it's not really talking about what you think it's talking about. People just don't understand the true interpretation. My biggest strength to reconciling my sexuality with my religion, and I say this to anyone who struggles with it, go and find out about it yourself. Don't trust anybody else's words. I don't care how close you think they are to you, because I've had some very close people to me that I grew up with in my family who have told me some of the most detrimental stuff in relation to my sexuality and my religion. Don't trust what they say because they can't relate to your experience. So go do the work yourself, go read it yourself, or, you know, go understand the true interpretation so that you actually know what's happening. Because if you go off of what they say, you're never gonna truly be able to reconcile your religion or your beliefs with your sexuality. And you shouldn't let their projections stop you from loving God or from feeling as if you can accept the belief of a higher being into your life. Like, don't let them take that from you. That's not something anyone should take from you. Do the work yourself and see past it and really say, no, you don't know what you're talking about. I've done the work, I've read this, I know what I'm talking about, and this is what I believe. Because at the end of the day, we're all doing what we all believe in. Who's to say that their beliefs are better than yours?
What's your opinion on how the Black church treats LGBTQIA+ individuals?
I think that the Black church does a terrible job with LGBTQ youth. I feel that they're just brushed under the rug and they're not even recognized, which really pisses me off, because I feel like the Black church will recognize like other Black movements, but they won't recognize the gay ones. And it kind of pisses me off. Like, say like, and I'm saying this as someone who is just like an outsider looking in, because I've also noticed this with like other Black organizations, but like, say like the Black Lives Matter movement. I feel like that's a movement that's more accepted by the church because they see it as racism, you know? So they'll sit here and they'll promote, or I know people who attend Black churches who will say, oh yeah, you know, like I support the Black Lives Matter. I have family members actually who are in the Black church and they support the Black Lives Matter movement. and you know they're over here and they know all the names of those who have been brutally targeted recently, which is, I stand with that. However, are we talking about all Black lives, or are we just talking about straight Black lives? Because trans Black women are murdered at such an insane rate. And so if we're talking about Black Lives Matter, are we talking about all of them? Because you want to sit here and you want to talk about, you know, the Black lives that you want to represent. But what about our sisters who, like, no one talks about all the Black trans women. And you know, and it almost the way they carry it, it almost makes it seem as if like them being gay or them being trans cancels them out with being Black. And that's not how it works. Like that right there, that blows my mind. It's like, okay, like how are you not going to fight for them as well? I feel like that is the biggest detriment the Black church is doing to the Black community, not standing up for the entire Black community, LGBT and straight combined. Like, you should stand up for all of them. They're Black, right? Their lives matter? Okay then, be that, say that, really stick up for them, all of them. Trans, gay, lesbian, all of that included.
How can heterosexuals be a good ally to queer folk?
Ooh, that's a good question. I feel as if you're straight and you want to be a good ally, the best that you can do is listen. Like, really sit there and listen to what the queer or LGBTQ people around you have to say, because most of the times they will let you know of the injustices that they're experiencing. It's just that most people never take the opportunity to listen to them and really hear about the experiences that they go through. So I feel as if the best thing that you could do is listen. And another thing, also be confident in who you are, like as a straight person, because I feel like straight men, confident straight men, make gay men feel more secure. And here's what I mean by that. So I recently, now that I'm in college, I have a whole new group of guy friends, which I think is excellent, because like I said, I only had one growing up and then I lost him, and then I went years without having some, or without having any really, and now I have like a handful of like healthy, cognizant, socially aware straight guy friends. And they're comfortable and confident into their sexuality to the point where they can talk about nail polish with me, or they could talk about other things that are considered traditionally feminine. Like me and my friend, we were just talking the other day, he likes this drink called like Pink Whitney, and he was like, yeah, you know, it's apparently a feminine drink. He was like, well, I don't care, like I love the way this tastes. And I was like, oh, like you should get some of that, like we can drink that tonight, like just something like that. But like, you being confident in your sexuality makes gay men feel comfortable in the sense that I know you're not hyper masculine. I know that I don't have to like be worried about, you know, doing something too feminine in front of you, say, versus with that person I was talking to earlier about my nail polish. I went from that person being insecure to having now a roommate who says, oh, you wear nail polish? I wear nail polish too. Like, what color is that? Like, you know, or like, what colors do you have? So like, you being confident in yourself and listening are two of the best things that you can do, because I'd say the difference between a real man and like a pseudo man is that like, a real man is confident and secure, and like a pseudo man, a term that I'm making up, is one who pretends or like subscribes to like what society says what a man should be. And so be yourself and all that comes with being yourself, and really learn to be comfortable with that before you try to be there for other people, because you need to make sure, you know, you're confident in who you are and who you want to be first, so you could understand why others deserve the right to act that way and be that way as well.
What message would you give to someone struggling to accept their sexuality?
I would say that, ooh, that's a good question. I would say that there's nothing wrong with you. Like, I feel like that's something we all need to hear growing up, because at some point I feel like that's something we all kind of struggle with, like, oh, like what's wrong? Like, how did I get here? But there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you, and even if you are struggling to accept yourself right now, that's okay, because I feel like most of us don't learn to accept ourselves in a day. That takes time. Like, it wasn't until me coming here recently into college and getting into my dorm and my own space that I was able to come into my personality so much more than when I was at home. And so even if it's something that you're still struggling to come to terms with today, that is okay. Just know that there's nothing wrong with you, and that in time, it is going to come together. Like, it is going to get better. I can promise you it will.
Do you have any final words for those watching?
Be yourself and be proud of it.
Do you want to plug in any social media outlets, any projects you're working on, anything?
Not at the moment, but if you want to follow me on Instagram, my name is Landin M.19. So there's that. I do have some project that I want to work on, but I am one of those where I don't want to jinx anything. So if you follow me, then you might see it, but until then, you can get a whiff of me on there.
All right, we're done.